The moment you disappear, something breaks inside them, and it doesn't break loudly. There is no explosion, no dramatic collapse, no immediate realization. It breaks the way ice fractures under a lake, silently, invisibly, spreading hairline cracks beneath the surface while everyone above keeps skating, unaware that the structure holding them is already compromised. You think disappearance is passive. You've been taught that absence is weakness, that silence is surrender, that walking away means you lost. That belief is the last lie keeping you obedient. Disappearance is not retreat, it is removal of oxygen. And most people have no idea how dependent they are on your presence until it is gone. Right now, as you listen, there is at least one place where you are overpresent, one relationship where you are predictable, one environment where your availability has become background noise. You answer, you show up, you smooth things over. You carry emotional weight that was never meant to be yours, and because you do it consistently, they no longer register it as value. They register it as atmosphere, always there, taken for granted, invisible until it's missing. When you disappear, the first thing they feel is confusion, but not the innocent kind. It's a sharp, destabilizing confusion, the kind that triggers the brain's threat circuits. Their mind begins searching for familiar signals and finds nothing, no reply, no presence, no emotional feedback. The pattern breaks, and the human brain hates broken patterns. Patterns equal safety. Predictability equals control. You were predictable. You were safe to read. Now you are not. This confusion is not about you as a person. It is about the sudden loss of orientation. You were a reference point, a stabilizer, a mirror. When you vanish, they lose information about themselves. They don't know where they stand anymore, and that not knowing creates discomfort that demands resolution. They replay interactions. They scan recent conversations. They look for the moment things shifted. This is where power quietly changes hands, not through confrontation, but through absence that forces introspection. The second thing they feel is irritation, but irritation masquerading as entitlement. It sounds like annoyance, but underneath it is panic. How dare you disrupt the role you were assigned? How dare you stop playing your part without explanation? This irritation is not righteous. It is possessive. It reveals that they saw your presence as a resource, not a choice. You were supposed to be there. You always were. And now you are not. Machiavelli understood this instinctively. He knew that people do not resent cruelty as much as they resent loss of access. Take something they never appreciated, and they will feel robbed. Your disappearance triggers this exact response. They may tell themselves you're being immature, dramatic, unprofessional, selfish. These labels are not analysis. They are self-soothing narratives designed to restore a sense of moral superiority while masking the deeper wound. The wound is simple. Control has been interrupted. Then comes the third sensation, more subtle, more dangerous, self-doubt, quiet at first, a faint internal question they do not want to ask directly. Was it me? Did I miscalculate? Did I push too far? This doubt does not surface immediately because it threatens their self-image, but it leaks in sideways, in moments of silence, in the gap between distractions. Your absence becomes a mirror they cannot avoid. Without your energy reflecting theirs back to them, they are forced to sit alone with their behavior. This is where disappearance does what confrontation never could. Confrontation gives them something to push against. Absence gives them nothing. No argument to win, no emotion to dominate, no reaction to dismiss. Just a void that quietly implies something was unacceptable, and because you did not explain, because you did not argue, because you did not plead, the mind fills the gap with its own conclusions. Conclusions are more powerful when they feel self-generated. You may think that disappearing means you are forgotten. This is another lie sold to those who fear being alone. Disappearance sharpens memory, presence dulls it. When you are always there, you blur into the background. When you are gone, your outline becomes clear. They remember not just that you are absent, but what your absence removes. The emotional labor, the reliability, the validation, the stabilizing force they unconsciously leaned on. They feel the weight they never acknowledged while you were carrying it. There is a physical component to this reaction. The body does not like unresolved social ruptures. The nervous system seeks closure. When closure is denied, tension accumulates. They feel restless, distracted, slightly agitated without knowing why. Your disappearance lodges itself in their system like an unfinished sentence, and unfinished sentences demand completion. This is why chasing closure weakens you. You rush to explain, to clarify, to be understood. You relieve their tension at the cost of your leverage. Disappearance does the opposite. It transfers tension to them. They now carry the discomfort. They now wonder. They now speculate. Power flows toward the one who can tolerate uncertainty longer. The fourth thing they feel is curiosity laced with fear. Curiosity about what you're doing, fear about why they are no longer included. Social systems run on information. When information dries up, imagination takes over, and imagination is rarely generous. They begin to wonder if you've moved on, grown colder, found stronger alliances, stepped into a version of yourself that no longer needs them. This imagined upgrade is often more threatening than any visible change. Notice how this works. You did nothing aggressive. You made no announcement. You issued no ultimatum. You simply removed yourself. And yet, internally, they are working harder than you ever did, trying to maintain the relationship. This is the reversal. This is the quiet violence of absence. If you are tempted to think this is manipulation, ask yourself this instead. Why did your presence require so much effort, and your absence requires none? Why were you responsible for maintaining equilibrium? Why did harmony depend on your silence? Disappearance is not manipulation when it is a response to imbalance. It is correction. There is a moment, and it varies by person, where the fifth sensation emerges. Respect, not admiration, not affection, respect. It arrives reluctantly, often disguised as irritation or dismissal. But it is there. Respect is born when someone realizes you are willing to walk away from dynamics that do not serve you. Respect emerges when access is no longer guaranteed, when your presence is revealed as a choice rather than an obligation. This respect does not require them to like you. In fact, it often grows faster when they don't. Liking is emotional. Respect is structural. It is based on what you will and will not tolerate. Disappearance redraws those lines without saying a word. You are not disappearing to be chased. That is still dependence. You are disappearing to recalibrate your position. Chase or no chase is irrelevant. What matters is that the old dynamic cannot continue. The system has been disrupted, and once disrupted, it can never return to its previous state. This is the wound you create by leaving. Not to harm, but to expose. Not to punish, but to reveal. Your absence forces truth to surface in a way your presence never could. And this is only the beginning of what they feel. Their internal world does not stabilize after that initial shock. It destabilizes further. Disappearance is not a single event. It is a process that unfolds in layers, and each layer strips something away from them that they did not realize they were relying on. After confusion, irritation, doubt, curiosity, and reluctant respect, something deeper begins to surface. Dependency. Not the dramatic kind where someone collapses and begs, but the quieter, more humiliating realization that their emotional equilibrium was partially outsourced to you. This is the sixth thing they feel, and it unsettles them the most. They begin to notice gaps, small ones at first. The absence of a certain tone in the room, the lack of immediate affirmation, the missing buff, fur that absorbed tension when things became uncomfortable. You were regulating more than you knew. You were stabilizing more than you were credited for. When you disappear, the system loses a shock absorber. Friction increases. Problems feel sharper. Conversations feel colder. And they cannot trace why. This is when the mind does something dangerous. It tries to rewrite history. They downplay your value. They tell themselves you are replaceable, insignificant, dramatic. This is not clarity. It is defense. The psyche protects itself by minimizing what it has lost. But minimization requires effort, and effort is a tell. If you truly did not matter, no narrative would be required. At the same time, a parallel process begins, comparison. They compare new interactions to old ones, new people to you, new energy to the absence you left behind. And here is the cruel irony. They may not miss you specifically. They miss how they felt in the system that included you. Stability, familiarity, a predictable source of engagement. When that system collapses, nostalgia creeps in, not as sentiment, but as reference. You become the standard, even if they never admit it. This is where Machiavelli's insight cuts deepest. People do not remain loyal to those who serve them. They become attached to those who withdraw in ways that create longing. Longing is a function of loss, not possession. You cannot be longed for if you're always available. You can only be longed for when your absence creates friction. Then comes the seventh feeling, the one that completes the arc. Fear. Not panic, not terror, existential unease. The fear that you did not just leave the situation, but outgrew it. That you saw something they didn't. That you chose yourself over the dynamic. This fear is subtle and corrosive because it threatens their self-concept. If you were willing to walk away, what does that say about the value of what they offered? What does it say about them? This fear often manifests as projection. They accuse you of arrogance, of thinking you're better, of being cold, of changing. These accusations are confessions in disguise. They are naming the very transformation they sense but cannot control. Your disappearance forces them to confront the possibility that you are no longer orbiting their gravity. And that loss of centrality is intolerable for those who derive identity from being needed, admired, or deferred to. Notice how none of this requires you to say a word. This is the power of disappearance. It bypasses debate and goes straight to the nervous system. It bypasses ego defenses and works on time. Time amplifies absence. Every day you do not return reinforces the new reality. Every day you remain silent rewires expectation. Silence sustained over time becomes a statement stronger than any speech. This is why disappearing impulsively and returning quickly destroys the effect. It teaches them that absence is a tantrum, not a boundary, that silence is a bluff. Real disappearance is clean, it is calm, it is internally resolved. You do not disappear to provoke a reaction. You disappear because you have withdrawn consent from a dynamic that required your self-erasure. There is also a transformation happening inside you during this process. At first, absence feels like amputation. You are used to being involved, used to monitoring, used to adjusting. When you disappear, your nervous system panics. It searches for the familiar feedback loop. This is withdrawal. You were addicted to the role you played, the fixer, the responder, the stabilizer. Letting go feels like losing identity. Then something shifts. Space opens. Mental bandwidth returns. The constant background noise quiets. You realize how much energy you were spending maintaining equilibrium that was never mutual. This realization is not gentle. It comes with anger, with grief, with clarity. But clarity, once gained, does not reverse. This is why disappearance changes you more than it changes them. They feel destabilized. You feel recalibrated. They search outward. You turn inward. They look for substitutes. You build autonomy. Over time, the power differential flips permanently, regardless of whether contact ever resumes. If they reach out, and many do, the tone will be different. There will be caution where there was casualness. There will be curiosity where there was entitlement. There may even be respect where there was dismissal. Not because they have evolved morally, but because the system has updated its risk assessment. You are no longer guaranteed, and what is not guaranteed must be handled carefully. If they do not reach out, that too is information. It tells you that the connection only existed because you sustained it, that your disappearance revealed the asymmetry. In either case, You win something invaluable: truth. And truth is the foundation of power. Most people never allow themselves to disappear properly. They hover, they lurk, they watch, they stay emotionally available while pretending to withdraw. This is not disappearance, this is surveillance, fueled by attachment. True disappearance is not about watching from the shadows. It is about stepping fully into your own life, redirecting attention, building momentum elsewhere. When you disappear correctly, you do not wait to be missed. You move on, whether you are or not. That is what makes the effect irreversible. The moment your center of gravity shifts away from their perception of you, you are no longer controllable through approval or disapproval. You have exited the loop. This is why disappearance is one of the darkest, most effective tools in the Machiavellian arsenal. It costs nothing outwardly, it demands everything inwardly. Discipline, patience, self-respect, the willingness to be misunderstood, the willingness to be alone, but in return, it gives you leverage that cannot be argued with. And yet, disappearance is not the end. It is a phase, a reset, a purification fire that burns away false dynamics and reveals what remains when convenience is removed. What matters next is how you return, or whether you return at all, when disappearance has done its work. When the noise has settled and the dust has cleared, you reach the most dangerous threshold of all, not for them, for you. This is where most people sabotage themselves without realizing it, because power regained is fragile until it is integrated. This is the moment where you are tempted to return too quickly, to explain what your absence meant, to translate silence into words so others can digest it comfortably. That impulse is the residue of the old you, still seeking approval, still wanting to be understood. Resist it. Understanding is not required. Adjustment is. If you return exactly as you were, disappearance becomes a pause, not a transformation. The system resets itself to the old pattern because patterns crave familiarity. The true effect of disappearance is not what it does to them in your absence, but what it makes impossible when you re-enter. You are not coming back to resume, you are coming back recalibrated, slower, heavier, less available, more selective. Your energy no longer flows outward by default. It waits, it watches, it responds only when conditions are right. This is when they feel something new, something they cannot quite name. Distance, even in proximity. You are there but not fully accessible. You listen, but you do not over-respond. You engage, but you do not over-invest. The emotional economy has shifted. They must now spend to receive. Effort is required where there was once entitlement. This subtle imbalance unsettles them far more than open hostility ever could. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately. He warned that power is lost when generosity becomes predictable. By disappearing, you broke predictability. By returning differently, you destroy entitlement. They can no longer map you, and what cannot be mapped cannot be controlled. Inside them, a quiet recalculation begins. How far can I go now? What happens if I test again? This is the moment of truth. If they test and meet nothing, the old dynamic resurrects. If they test and meet consequence, even subtle consequence, the new order solidifies. This does not require confrontation. It requires consistency. Power is not established in one dramatic moment. It is confirmed through repeated, unemotional enforcement. There is an internal shift happening in you as well. The longer you stay disappeared internally, even while present externally, the less reactive you become. You stop monitoring others' moods. You stop preemptively fixing tension. You stop bending to maintain comfort. This creates a strange sensation at first, like walking without armor you didn't realize you were wearing. Vulnerable but also free. The armor was never protecting you, it was weighing you down. People sense this freedom before they understand it. They feel that you are no longer negotiating your worth in real time, that you are not auditioning for approval, that you can take or leave outcomes. This is what Nietzsche meant when he spoke of the individual who has outgrown the herd, not superior in morality, but independent in valuation. You are no longer using their reactions as a compass. You are using your own internal alignment. This is where disappearance completes its alchemy. It turns your need outward into gravity inward. Gravity does not chase, it attracts, it bends space. Others begin to adjust without knowing why. They choose words more carefully. They hesitate before crossing lines. They offer where they once took, not out of kindness, but out of instinct. The instinct that recognizes coherence and strength. Some will not adjust. They will feel the loss of control too sharply. They will escalate, provoke, attempt to pull you back into the old dance. This is where resolve is tested. You do not argue. You do not justify. You let them experience the full weight of the boundary through your continued indifference. Escalation without reaction collapses into impotence. Fire without oxygen dies. Others will fade quietly. They were never connected to you. They were connected to the access you provided. Let them go without ceremony. Power is conserved by pruning, not by hoarding. Every dynamic you release frees energy for something aligned to enter. This is not loss, it is optimization. At this stage, something critical must be understood. Disappearance is not a trick to regain leverage and then resume dependency on a higher rung. That is still dependence. True disappearance rewires your identity so leverage becomes unnecessary. You are no longer trying to control outcomes. You are selecting environments. You are not fixing dynamics. You are exiting misaligned ones. This is the part no one romanticizes because it is quiet. There is no applause, no dramatic reversal, just a steady sense of internal authority. You wake up less anxious. You speak less and mean more. You feel your spine in your body again. Respect is no longer something you chase. It is something you allow or deny through access. The greatest illusion you shed here is the belief that connection requires constant maintenance. Healthy systems self-regulate. They do not require one person to bleed energy to keep them alive. When you disappear and the system collapses, you did not abandon it. You revealed its truth. This is why disappearance terrifies those who rely on control. They cannot force you to stay without exposing themselves. They cannot dismiss you without feeling the loss. They cannot win because there is no contest. You have stepped outside the frame entirely. As this becomes embodied, you notice something else. You are no longer obsessed with how they feel. Their confusion, irritation, curiosity, fear, respect, dependency, all of it becomes secondary. Center of gravity has moved. What matters now is how you feel in your own presence. Calm, decided, unavailable to manipulation. This is sovereignty, and sovereignty changes what you want. You no longer crave validation from places that required your disappearance to recognize your value. You want clean exchanges, mutual effort, quiet respect. You become allergic to dynamics that once felt normal. This is growth, but it is also isolation at first. The world thins before it deepens. This is the final internal test before the last phase, whether you will use disappearance as a tactic or whether you will let it complete you. Because once you have learned how powerful absence truly is, you face a choice: to return to the world unchanged or to step into a level of self-command that makes disappearance unnecessary, and that choice carries a cost. Most people are unwilling to pay. The cost is not loneliness, though you will feel alone at first. It is not being misunderstood, though many will misunderstand you. The true cost is that you can never unknow what you now know. Once you have felt the leverage of absence, once you have seen how quickly dynamics reveal their truth when you step away, you lose the ability to lie to yourself. You can no longer pretend that effort equals value, that endurance equals loyalty, that suffering quietly makes you noble. You see the structure beneath behavior, and seeing structure destroys comforting myths. This is where disappearance stops being a tactic and becomes a philosophy. You no longer ask what they feel when you disappear, because your life no longer revolves around their internal weather. Their confusion, fear, longing, respect, all of it becomes background noise. The real transformation is that you stop needing to matter in places that require you to disappear to be noticed. You stop negotiating for relevance. You stop auditioning for permanence. You understand, viscerally, that access to you is a privilege, not a right. Look carefully at what staying visible used to cost you. The constant monitoring, the emotional labor, the self-editing, the strategic shrinking. You were always slightly bent, slightly alert, slightly braced for impact. That posture drains a human being over time. It turns life into a series of performances instead of a place of rest. Disappearance breaks that posture. It lets your spine straighten. And when your spine straightens internally, the world responds differently. This is why so many people fear your absence more than your anger. Anger can be dismissed. Absence cannot. Absence suggests finality. It suggests choice. It suggests that you are not trapped. And nothing is more threatening to a fragile ego than realizing someone does not need you the way you need them. That asymmetry is unbearable for those who derive identity from dominance, attention, or emotional leverage. At the highest level, disappearance teaches you the most dangerous lesson of all, that you can survive without approval, that you can be whole without witnesses, that your nervous system does not collapse when you are not needed. This lesson rewires you permanently. Once learned, you become immune to many forms of manipulation. Guilt stops working, shame loses its teeth, urgency evaporates, you begin to move at your own pace, guided by internal alignment rather than external pressure. This is the Machiavellian insight refined by time and psychology. Power is not in making others feel. It is in no longer being controlled by what they feel. When you disappear correctly, you reclaim authorship over your attention, your energy, your presence. You decide where you show up and where you do not. You are no longer reacting to disrespect. You are preemptively exiting environments where disrespect could even form. There will be moments when the old world tries to pull you back. Familiar voices, nostalgic invitations, subtle guilt wrapped in warmth. They will sense the distance and attempt to bridge it without changing themselves. This is where your resolve is tested one final time. You do not explain why you changed. You do not justify your absence. You let your standards speak through consistency. The ones who can meet you there will rise. The rest will fall away. This is not cruelty. It is clarity. The world is full of people who want access without responsibility, closeness without effort, connection without respect. Disappearance filters them out with surgical precision. It does not argue. It does not negotiate. It simply removes itself from the equation. At this stage, something almost spiritual happens. Your need to disappear fades because your presence is no longer cheap. You do not need to vanish to be respected because you no longer overextend. You no longer leak energy. You no longer train others to devalue you. Disappearance did its work. It taught you restraint, selectivity, self-command. You become someone who can stay or leave with equal calm. Someone who does not threaten departure, because departure is always an option. Someone who does not demand respect, because respect is built into the terms of access. This is the paradox. The less you need to disappear, the more powerful the knowledge of disappearance becomes. Most people will never reach this point. They will flirt with absence, retreat halfway, return too soon, explain too much, apologize for protecting themselves. They will use disappearance as a cry for validation instead of a declaration of worth. Those people remain trapped in the same loops, just with new strategies layered over old fear. But if you have listened this far, if something in your chest feels heavier and calmer at the same time, you already sense what this knowledge demands. It demands discipline, patience, the willingness to disappoint, the courage to be empty long enough for something real to grow. This is not content for everyone. It is not meant to be shared casually or understood lightly. Most people will misuse it or reject it outright. That is why it is not taught openly. That is why it is transmitted quietly, person to person, through experience rather than slogans. If you are ready to go beyond disappearance and into full command of presence, absence, silence, and timing, then you already know this is only the surface. There are deeper layers, sharper applications, more refined control that cannot be spoken publicly without being neutered by misunderstanding. The next level is not about watching videos, it is about training perception, about learning when to speak, when to withdraw, when to let others expose themselves, and when to end games without ever touching the board. That knowledge is not for the curious, it is for the committed. The door is there for those who recognize it. Not everyone should walk through it, but if you do, you will never move through the world the same way again.